Hey everybody, welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thanks for joining us. On this channel and our Goshen News channel, we've been talking about the inevitable war, the war that is coming that we don't think we can stop this, coming between Russia and NATO, and of course a whole host of other countries that may be involved as well. And the thing is, we get into arguments, and please don't do this, because as people, we want to argue this person's at fault, this person's at fault, or they both are at fault, etc. That's completely getting away from the prize. Don't get discouraged or distracted by these things. The prize being survival. We are preppers. We want to prep. And no matter who's fighting, whatever the case may be, our job is to make it through this. That's the important part. That is our goal as preppers. So I'm going to go through some certain things that if a war does break out, a major war like World War III, we're going to obviously see some serious changes here in the United States. And let's go through those because, again, as preppers, we want to be ready for this. Number one, conscription. Yeah, obviously the draft is coming. In the United States, not a lot of people are volunteering. So I think personally, to try to make it a little more palatable, trying to get people to come in and not try to dodge it, even though you really can't dodge it anyway anymore. Well, I think we're going to see a lot of, I'm going to go ahead and make a term called e-fighting, electronic fighting, because it's much easier for some millennial or Gen Zer to fly a drone and be completely separate from where it's going. In fact, I mean, even for myself, the thought of actually being at the hands and controls of a drone flying it around sounds like fun. It's like playing, flight simulator on your computer. But of course, the ramifications of actually killing someone is there. But I think there's a big disconnect when you actually just see it on a screen and not realizing that you just dropped a bomb. It's actually killing not only men, but obviously women and children too in that area. But either way, even though that may be an easier option to sell for bringing a lot of people in, the conscription is coming and there is a draft. And we have to deal with the fact that our sons, possibly even our daughters too, and our grandkids may be drafted into a war which literally may take their life. But either way, I want you to understand, with this major war, a draft is coming. Number two, there goes the working population. Of course, in this big working population, a lot of them are going to be going off to war. We saw that in World War II. If you think we're having a labor shortage now, just wait. Right now, I don't know about you, where you go, but the wait times and things of going to the doctor or if you go to a store, there just simply, it doesn't seem to be enough people in the labor force to be able to take care of our needs. What's it going to be like if a giant chunk of the population's off fighting the war somewhere? I think we're going to see labor shortages everywhere, and it's obviously going to be much more catastrophic. But what happens to that huge percent of the workforce when they're off fighting a war? How are we going to be able to deal with it here in the United States? Number three, industry ramps back up. And of course, having the big stamp made in America to me is very important. I think when we look at industry ramping up, it's not going to be something made in America unless it's like a shell or a bomb or some kind of smart guided missile heading off to war. And that's the whole point. Because when we see right now, our armaments and our ammo is actually low because we sent so much to Ukraine. We actually have quite a bit still, mind you. But a lot of the stockpile and reserves have been used up for this. We're getting rid of a lot of our aged stuff. We have to be able to ramp back up to replace it again. And we're going to be seeing a lot of this stuff, if not all of it, made here in the good old USA. We're going to see the industry picking up. But think about this. Again, if we have a labor shortage, but the military industrial complex industry is picking up, well, that's going to be even more labor shortage going in that direction. So when we see this happening, we're going to see a lot of the regular businesses in America, if it is not a priority one, being put on the back burner. You may not actually have the manpower, which again makes it even more difficult for the rest of us. Even power too, because right now our power grid is kind of stretched thin. I mean, we have enough power, but soon, we know very soon that's going to change, and we will not have enough power to be able to run a lot more industry that picks up. Again, not to mention trying to run everything we had before. I think what's going to happen is to try to make things work, because I think we're going to see some kind of major catalyst that's going to bring us into the war. I think there's going to be an executive order that's going to mandate a whole bunch more industry in America picks up because of this. What do you think about that? Number four, of course, shortages. Obviously, food. I mean, probably toilet paper too. But obviously food and a lot of the essentials will have shortages. I mean, it happened in the last World War. We see there simply isn't enough food going around because we have to be able to feed our servicemen that are overseas working. But when we see a lot of shortages, it's not just food, but like metals, a lot of products, gasoline, rubber. Even rubber right now, by the way, has a little bit of shortage of what's going on with it. But the industries in those areas may pick up. But unfortunately for you and I, we will not see the changes because, again, it goes off for the war effort and not necessarily for us who's back home. And five, with that, rationing. So to make sure that commerce in America does still continue, you'll see rationing. That's what we saw last time. There'll be fuel rationing, food rationing. all the industry will eventually pick up. Until then, those goods are going off to war and not for you, at least not as much anyway, and you'll have much less. I mean, it's amazing to me, even like butter was rationed. We have a whole video about this, I'll link at the end, of things that were rationed in World War II that we have to consider that possibly may return for this next war. But again, the biggest one I really want to point out is power rationing, because industry out of anything requires so much power. And we don't have a lot of power being generated in the United States anymore. And if we see industry picking up, it's got to come from somewhere. Well, that's coming away from us and going into industry. So when that happens and this military industrial complex picks up even more, we'll see in other places that we actually even depend on, maybe even your home, the power is actually going down. And of course, we can prepare for that by maybe having solar or a solar generator, or just get used to not having electricity all the time. Number 6, propaganda and censorship. Not only is it coming, it's already here. It's amazing the amount of censorship, especially we've seen lately in the past few years, and what this person calls misinformation or disinformation. This one says it's something else. And this whole thing about fake news is popping up everywhere. And each side of the aisle laughs at each other saying, no, you're fake. No, you're fake. And it's crazy. During wartime, it's always at its heightened. And we're not even at wartime yet. I can imagine what it's going to be like soon. But it's going to be a lot more than just World War II, where like even leaflets were dropped for propaganda. Or what, as they would say, loose lips sink ships. Instead, what we're going to see is a lot of metadata. I think like on your phone, you'll probably talk about certain things. And I think a lot of that stuff will be screened. And you may have some kind of people showing up at your door, Homeland Security or the FBI, because you've been talking about not liking certain things, because trying to snuff out the people who are against the war is one of those things they do when it comes to censorship. It happened in World War II, by the way, and very well will happen in the next one too. But now it's much easier for them for the fact they can have AI searching for this data. And I hate to say it, when you got your phone, hey, I want to talk on my phone now, you have to agree to that. And to agree to it allows you to release that information to the federal government if they want it. So it's not even a matter of like having a warrant anymore. They're just happy to hand it out. Hey, look, this person here is talking about how they don't like the war and this and everything else. You might want to talk with them to make sure they're not some kind of spy. But neighbors ratting each other out, that's going to be one of the biggest things we see, because historically speaking, this is one of the biggest things that has happened. Neighbors who are patriotic are happy to rat out the neighbors who are not so patriotic. And often, being a prepper, even though we're the most patriotic, we're often labeled as the ones who are not the patriotic ones, because we're not going with the way, well, the government wants us to go. It's always been that way. I remember in World War II, there's over 100,000 Japanese Americans taken to concentration camps. Many of them American citizens, if not almost all of them. They're American citizens. And they didn't deserve this. And we look at, past tense wise, we're like, that's horrible. But during wartime, horrible things happen. And that's something we have to be ready for, because the concentration camps next time may be for us. Number 7, cyber attacks. Guaranteed this will drastically increase. They're already happening now, by the way. And if we see a major war, then we're going to be looking at them taking their gloves off their hands and saying, that's it, you're really going to cyber attacks now. And it's not necessarily just military that's going to be attacked, but our infrastructure, which includes things we depend on, will be attacked. I mean, think about this. Credit cards and banking trying to simply just get away the trust that Americans have. The infrastructure, shortages in the store, commerce of things going down the highway, airlines, restaurants, gas stations, banks, all potentially shutting down, making it so things can't move so quickly, because the more you stifle up an enemy, the easier it is for you to overcome that enemy. So cyber attacks guaranteed will be coming. And 8, physical attacks at home too. And this is something we don't even want to even think about. Attacks on our own soil here in the United States, the continental United States, or obviously Hawaii or Alaska too, or even our interest abroad. I mean, it's happening right now, but that is one of the fears we look at. But could you imagine actual bombing runs or missiles or even hypersonic missiles hitting our continental United States, or even worse, obviously, some type of tactical nukes? Don't think that this isn't a possibility. Of course it is. And we have to take that into consideration, that if we're in a war, the war easily could come here. Back in World War II, trying to actually land a plane a few hours away was difficult because of fuel, and therefore the whole front had to move to let the plane. We can, that's not happening anymore. We can send jets across the entire world without, stopping for refueling. We can refuel in midair, not just ours, but Russian stuff too. Stuff from space. I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that can happen to us on our soil. But one thing for sure we could see too is even boots on the ground. Actual soldiers with their boots on the ground in the United States. Very, very real possibility, considering We already have millions of people who have infiltrated the country through the open border. And how many of those are boots on the ground, actual military men just waiting for the situation to present itself? It's something we must consider. Okay, so there's 8 things for you to contemplate and look at, because if we do see a war between NATO or against the United States and whomever, things are going to drastically take place here in the United States. And of course, that's why we prep. That's why we watch Goshen Prepping. Continue with all the things we talk about on the channel all the time: stockpiling food and water, ways to protect yourself, way to keep warm in the winter. There's so many things we could prepare for, because understand, when that time comes and we do go to war, all those things, when you try to get them then, will be very difficult. So try to make sure you have them now, so that way at least it'll be a little bit easier for you, a little bit more. And of course, it's stuff we'll have to deal with when the time comes, if and when the United States goes to war. As always, thanks for watching.